There you go. The David Grissom jingle.
Love it.
Yeah. It's my wife singing and me trying to come up with some ideas. Failing miserably. But anyway, look, David, thanks for doing this. That's really kind of you to take the time to do it because you're obviously super busy. Rather than just ask you how you started out, because a lot of people have asked you that question, I think there's a lot that, there's still a lot of stuff to talk about. But I wanted to pick your brains about a few specifics, really. So what I did, I took down a few things that really caught my ear. And there's one thing I saw, which was a PRS thing that you did. It was some PRS road trip or something. He was playing from your home studio and just playing a few tunes. And oh man, a few of the things, well, a lot of the things on that really caught my imagination. And the first one I looked at was Skimming the Surface. And that threw up a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that kind of, you could say, kind of sounds like something or something else. But one thing I got from studying your style is I hung out with Brent Mason for a couple of days a few years ago. I did an interview with him in Nashville. And he was talking about Jerry Reed. I think he said something along the lines that Jerry Reed sort of saw himself as a guitar thinker, not so much a guitar player. He's somebody who really wanted to craft he wanted everything to be worthwhile and well thought out. And just listening to your playing, it's just full of these amazing things. I was listening to the Storyville live at Antone's thing earlier, and just the way you play rhythm as well. I wish I'd transcribed some of that stuff. But it seems that everything you've done, you've crafted your own thing on it. And you've mentioned the open string thing a few times in interviews and stuff. But there's one thing I wanted to pick your brains. We got a mutual friend, Sandy Williams, who you used to know back in the day, was telling me that you'd had lessons with Pat Metheny, and then I saw you saying that to some guy in an interview. But there's a thing that you play in this, and it sounds to me, see if I can murder this little rhythm lick thing before that picks up. So where am I? So it's a unison thing, we're in B minor. That sounds to me like one of those Metheny guitar synth things. It really sounds like, the days when Metheny used a guitar synth on organ. That to me just sounds like it's really come out of that bag. So is that fair, do you think? Did you?
Honestly, well, first of all, he got that from me.
Oh, really? That's amazing. Really?
I just I couldn't resist. I saw him play last week and it was like, off the chain. It's like in his world, there's him. And then in the rock world, to me, there's like Jeff Beck, who keeps, going like this. So of course I'm being facetious. I never thought about that. That sort of thing there with the open string ringing is really, to be honest, is from when I was in junior high school and listening to Billy Gibbons. And that specifically is like Blue Jean Blues. Right. If you know that song, No. I mean, okay. not verbatim, but I mean, he's just these really simple things. And so then I just started to, that open, I love playing in B, E, all the string, the ones that you can get those. It's just the whole blues thing.
Yeah. See, that's
it's really interesting that you hear Metheny in that, because, I mean, there's no way I could, I have a thousands of the harmonic knowledge that he has, but there's no way that his phrasing and the way he plays melody hasn't crept into what I like, and sort of, there's got to be an element of that. And we both I think that there is something to this idea that growing up in the Midwest. I mean, I guess I grew up in, Kentucky. That's the Midwest or the South. People will argue that point. It's kind of both. That's sort of a folk song aesthetic. Before there was the genre called Americana. It was more like folk music, and his melodies are very much like that. Especially did a record, or even Bright Side's Life, his first record, which is really like this new language to me. I think influenced by Gary Burton and Carla Bley, and those writers had, even when he's playing over some really interesting changes, it really has a folk song vibe to it.
Yeah.
So there's that mesh of the beauty of growing up in an era where everything wasn't on YouTube, where it was just like, go to the record store and take your chances, or do I want to spend my hard-earned $3.99 on that Pat Metheny record because I like the cover of it and it just feels like something inside says buy that record. You really had to go and look for things, and in my case, I enjoyed Pat Metheny as much as I did Albert King and Norman Blake. And so it was that all, like, Norman Blake is another guy with the open string thing. I mean, the bluegrass players, that's a huge part of bluegrass is using open strings. And we could go on and on and on, and I've derailed your question. I know. No,
not at all. Not at all. Because that's not, well, that's kind of not the answer I was expecting, but that's positive. There's another line. You play something like this other thing, right? And this is another influence. I guess every time, whenever anybody's trying to interpret anything, they just have their sort of reference points, don't they? So for me, I mean, I'm really into Metheny. I wrote a book of Metheny I wrote the first book of legal Metheny transcriptions for my sins. So that's kind of in me, I'm not very good at it, but I've studied that kind of style. There's another line here. See if I can kill this one too. And that to me, it almost sounded like a Robert Johnson kind of thing. Robert Johnson with these there's kind of voices where you got unison. So instead of just like a plain A chord, or you'd have two G's ringing together, or maybe two G's and two E's. Almost like a parallel to that kind of Pete Townsend thing where you get more unisons in there, basically. Yeah. I wondered if that was part of it too, that kind of, Delta blues kind of thing.
I think it definitely is. I think it's, definitely. I mean, that first lick that you played. You can. And then, I just sort of started using all the other open strings. And to me, it's the open strings that are available help define the personality of a key. Which we can I don't want to go back to your point on doubling notes within chords. That was I don't know. I mean, to me, I think, the Robert Johnson, I'm sure in his own way, without necessarily, I don't know, I can't say that he was thinking about it, but playing solo, you're trying to create the biggest sound you can.
Yeah.
And the same thing when I first started playing with Joe Ely, it was just guitar, bass, and drums. And Joe played a little guitar, but not that much. And so I was just trying to create this big sound. And a lot of that has to do with, repeating in rock music, at least. Often, for me, it's to leave out the third and then emphasize the 1 and the 5. And you could, like my typical E chord is. So the whole, there's nothing but B and E ringing, A, B, and that's Pete Townsend.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
And I love sus. You know, to me, and then and when you do that, you know, and
Yeah.
who else does, you know, who else that, I mean, I got it. I kind of was influenced by Pete Townsend probably more than anything, you know, and then the occasional AC/DC stuff, Malcolm Young, but also Andy Partridge and XTC played a lot of those chords, you know, and it, like, I recorded a song with John Mellencamp in like '91 called Melting Pot, and it's just that's the hook of the song, and I'm just playing an out of tune G chord and lifting it up, and then, you know, it's just funny because I heard Andy Partridge. They have I don't know if you're familiar with XTC or not.
A little bit, yeah.
They have a song called Playground, and it's kind of it's kind of the same thing, but a different phrasing of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I heard that later, but so that didn't influence me playing that before, but you know, just playing around those forms. Because to me, I'm going to tune up because it's driving me crazy. To me, I just don't like bar chords. I really don't like, I mean, on a guitar, I have no idea what my guitar now sounds like coming through your speakers, but when you use gain, any gain at all, and generally I don't really use that much gain. I just, if I wanted to break up, I turn the guitar up all the way and hit it harder.
Right.
That when you play 6 strings with a third in it, to me it doesn't make me feel good, and so that's where I started to eliminate the third. Now on a minor chord, it doesn't bother me as much, but on a major chord, that drives me nuts. I like that. Just makes me feel good. And I'll use the third in sort of the faux open tuning thing. That's only 4 notes, you know.
Yeah.
The 6-note thing is like,
yeah,
I hate it.
It sort of sounds out of tune a lot of times, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it's almost impossible to really get that chord in tune.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I did classical guitar at college, and it's awful because those guys are trying to bend the strings laterally to get complex chords in tune. Oh man. Oh no, thanks. I'm glad I stopped doing that stuff. But I've seen you mention, or heard you mention, Jimmy Page as well. I mean, Page is that. It seems to me like you've got some of that in there. I heard you mention Free. It almost sounds like there's a bit of Bad Company in there. What's that? Like,
well, definitely Free. I mean, definitely All Right Now. That's all that is.
Oh yeah.
But, I mean, Paul Kossoff, that's his chord, you know, and that was definitely, you know. Yeah, so there's that too, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just think like Page, everybody plays, but it's, so that's a unison D. Anyway, whatever. It's just
the one a little sharp.
Yeah. So there's. Yeah.
So that's really cool. How did he think of that?
Well, how did he think of a lot of things? I mean,
I know. To me, his thing was arrangements.
Oh
man,
man,
yeah. Arranged guitars was really kind of the thing that influenced me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some amazing layering of things, isn't there? You know,
the layering and the different tones, and you know,
that's just in Ramble. It's like, man, layering all the stuff up with the acoustics.
And all the acoustics, yeah, it's beautiful.
So brilliant. Yeah. But yeah, well, I mean, that Matheny experience, did that, other than that sort of melodic sense, did he ever get down and dirty with harmony with you? Did he really get into some of that?
No, I only
The
took one
stuff.
lesson from him.
Oh, really?
I was 17 and I went to Berkeley for like a summer program for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And he was playing at the jazz workshop for like 5 nights. And I went and met him and then just kind of hung around and talked to him after the show every night. And I went over to his apartment in Cambridge and just took one lesson from him. Oh. And so I did not study with him. I mean, you know, but he just, his whole thing with me was play melody, play melody, play melody, play more melody. And, you know, we played a couple tunes together and it was you know, I've told the story a couple times, but one of the nights during that week, Dixie Dregs were upstairs and he was downstairs, and Steve Morse came down, and Matheny was using the MXR digital delay a little bit at that point, but not near what it evolved into. And I was sitting there trying, you know, chatting him up, you know, bothering him, I know, a pest. And Steve Morse came down and they knew each other really well. And they were talking and Steve goes, "Oh, you got one of those MXRs?" He goes, have you ever tried doing this? And he pulled out a chord in the back and then moved some chords around. He said, "Check that out." And Pat played a couple notes and it was like, that was the sound. That was the chorus thing. And at that point, Matheny had no interest in talking to me. I realized that I needed to pack up, but that was the moment. I was like, I was standing there, you know, so I went back. I went to school in Indiana for a year, thinking I was going to study music, and didn't really work out. But the next time I saw him play was at a coffee house in Indianapolis, and he had a little PV amp as the second amp sitting on top of an upright piano that I was right underneath, and all this. It was like chorus. I mean, like that. But you know, it was like way hipper than any pedal, the way he was doing it. And so, you know, that's just kind of an interesting, weird coincidence that I was standing there when Steve Morse showed him how you could get that sound.
It's amazing, yeah.
So yeah, I didn't study with him, but I studied him.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool time in my life where, you know, having kind of spent a lot of time on the Beatles and the Stones and Albert King and B.B. King. When I was a senior in high school, maybe, I got a jazz teacher who, you know, started to listen to Wes Montgomery and Kenny Burrell. And then, so my palette was expanding a lot. And then to be around, just in that 5-week period, man, that changed my life. I mean, you know, I heard him. I think I went almost every night, and Pat Martino played one week and I went almost every night, and I took a lesson from him too. He borrowed my amp. He had a rental amp that didn't work very well, and it was kind of farting out on the first night. And I said, "Do you need an amp?" He goes, "Yeah, sure. I sure could use one." And I went down to the dorm and got mine and brought it back, and he put me on the guest list every night and then gave me a lesson. I still have all the handwritten notes from it.
What did he talk about in that lesson then?
It was just kind of like his whole, you know, timbre, you know, looking at the fingerboard as a choice of timbral, you know, making timbral choices based on where you were and how you voice chords, combination of strings to get the same thing. And this whole thing about, you know, if you raise, you know, the root of a flat 7 chord is half step away from any note in a diminished chord. I can't, you know, I mean,
he's got all those things, yeah,
all those things, and he wrote them off. Got like 4 pages,
right.
Which is really cool. I mean, he's like the one guy to me, like the whole jazz straight 8, you know, like the real super even thing bores me. Really, I just find it to be rather boring, except when he does it.
Oh yeah.
he has this this interior rhythm pulse thing that even when he's just playing 16th notes continuously, it feels different than when I hear most jazz guys that really, you know, there's a lot of emphasis placed on, you know, when you practice scales in conventional guitar instruction, playing evenly, alternate picking, and having every note have the same volume. And I'm like, man, I don't want that.
Mm.
That's the one. I mean, it's okay to practice that, and that's cool to practice that, and then you can go back. Then you can jump off from there, and that's fine. But you know, it's just, to me, it's like talking like this in a monotone voice. I don't want to, you know, you've lost your attention already, and actually bugging you. You know, I mean, so, but Martino, when he does it, it's just like, it's like he's like riding a wave.
Yeah. See, this is interesting because you're jogging my memory. I'm looking around. I must look slightly deranged, which I am, but I've got another screen here where I've got this transcription of that solo from the PRS thing on Skimming the Surface. And it feels to me, there's a few places it feels like you're going to just jump off and go into Pat Martino land. It just feels like, is he going to go that direction? And you got its fantastic thing. So let me find one of these. So you play this. So you do this thing, right? So this is the B minor thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want it to sound like I'm telling you what you're doing. I know you know what you do. But it's on B minor. But you do this thing. So you're playing, it starts like G sharp to E. What I'm getting at really is it sounds almost like you're playing E7 over B. So, you know, there's that jazz thing where jazz players will see it, like if you think of an extended period on a minor 7, you could think of that as the 2 of a 2/5. So you could think of like an extended period on B minor. So somebody like Pat Martino would play out of the E7 bag of tricks, and they just think, play between the two. You might have a long period of what sounds like, you know, like bebop, sort of malarkey. So they're stepping between the 5 chord inference. So over B minor, there'd be a lot of like using bebop E7 sort of stuff. So it feels like you're doing that. Yeah. And the contour of those lines, it's like just I mean, I'm talking about professional, your average professional, great blues rock player will always play great lines, but I've never heard anybody play this bag of tricks. And I wonder if that's a conscious thing, now that you've mentioned Pat Martino, because I was thinking Pat Martino does that thing where he plays on B minor kind of stuff. Is that something you think about when you play? I think I heard you talk about this tune and mention Dorian. Now that G sharp is in Dorian, but do you think of that as an approach, the 2/5 kind of interchangeability thing?
When we're talking about it, I think about it.
Right.
And I'm sure I've thought about it, but I mean, you know, it's a B minor 11.
Right, so it's halfway there.
So, but the other, you know, the so I really am like playing E7, more E7.
That's a great head. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and then with just chromatics, I mean, any note goes if you get off of it quick enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can play that, you know, the half whole thing if as long as you're not like making it sound like an exercise, but it's you can slip that in within, you know. I mean, those triads, you know, the stacked triad.
I love that.
Like footprints, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of in.
So that's all in there. Yeah. Oh, David, that's fantastic, man. That's so lovely, great. Some of that solo, it's like, I think if somebody played that, somebody who didn't know your style, they might think just that snippet of it. Is that Wayne Krantz? Who is that guy? Is that Oz Noy? It's like, it's so lovely, so evolved. It's really cool. There's another thing you do here. I'm not sure I can execute this, but after you play. That I love that. I mean, people use the open string thing like Brent.
Are you reading that? Are you reading?
Yeah,
that?
I wrote it down. Yeah.
That's cool. It's hard to write. It's hard to read that and incorporate the open strings.
Yeah, tell me about it. It looks. You should see this piece of paper.
I can imagine. Yeah, that you're a braver man than I.
Well, you know.
I don't know. I mean, it just goes to you know. It's just like if this all works, of all those, and B, you know, B Dorian, you just have to stay away from that.
Yeah.
If it all works down here, it should work up here. And so if it works on B Dorian, it works on E7.
Yeah. Oh man, somebody should do a book. Somebody should do a book of your stuff. They really do.
You can do it on, you know, do it on A major 7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just same notes, you know.
But it's a lot of work, I imagine. I mean, to pull all those things together and to have them under your fingers. That's what I've really enjoyed checking out some of your live things. Which is how I got into these things. Some of the things you do at your regular gig. Oh man, there's some great stuff. And also, that's the first place I came across that. All that kind of stuff. There's another thing I took down. There's I've heard you say it. You've got your own sort of take on that chicken picking sort of thing, but it's that real guitar thinker thing. And that's what makes it the kind of playing you just want to. I just want to take it apart and figure out what the hell it's made of. But it's the kind of thing that makes you want to listen over and over. So this is off Boots Likes to Boogie. And then... So... And then you do all this... A lot of people play those double stop bends, but you've linked up the areas and oh man, that's so good. It's like listening to a great steel player. I know you've had experience of playing alongside great steel players, but you really have it. So you're up all the way over the guitar, not, you know, that sort of like music shop country sort of like, I've got this one bend. You know what I mean? You link up all the areas.
It just comes down to knowing the fingerboard. I mean, it's amazing. Like when I do workshops and clinics, you know, I tried to be nice about it, but people just don't know the fingerboard. I mean, like Yeah, and I just like, okay, you just sit in at the blues jam and the guy has his guitar down a half step. Can you play an E flat? I mean, you got to learn the fingerboard. It's like you got a secretary needs to know where, be able to type, I mean, and so for me, it's a visual instrument as much as anything. And, I mean, in Boots Likes to Boogie, it's actually in drop D, but I mean, I see D, it's in D, it's a D7. I mean, I just see it,
Yeah.
If you want to learn how to do that, just start high and just do the. Down the mixed Lydian scale, and if that's D, take it in A, it's a little friendlier. And then then you start linking it together.
Yeah.
And then A, the open strings at A give it its own thing. And every string is fair game, and right.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing. There's one thing years ago I had to do a little tour of China, like a clinic thing, and I decided for my sins I just done for an educational project. I just done because we've ended as lovers, and I didn't want to play Jeff Beck's solo because I knew nobody can play it, Jeff Beck solo like Jeff Beck, so there's no point. There's one thing I sort of thought with Mixolydian. So sounds like Indian music to me sometimes, Mixolydian, when you lean into the fourth.
Yeah.
But I mean, Hendrix had that thing, didn't he? Sort of like going down the Mixolydian, making it sound like really esoteric. Jeff Beck too.
Yeah.
Oh man, this to hear you play with a trio, that's a big part of the kind of resonance of the thing, the way you've sort of connected those shapes like that. And you do that, all that sort of stuff you do. Oh man, if I lived in Austin, I'd be there every week, definitely. Just like, it's an amazing sound, really amazing sound. So that our mutual friend Sandy was telling me, he pulled up to your house, or the house you were living in when you guys were younger, and he reckons he heard you practicing Donna Lee with octave displacement, which seems
I can't do it now, but when I was my freshman, the 1 year went to music school as a project, I learned Donna Lee within one octave. I learned within the whole thing. I can't even begin to do it now. I wrote it out all within one octave.
Wow.
And it's a wild sound.
Oh man.
I mean, I can still play it, but I can't play it in one octave. It was really challenging.
That sounds.
I had like, I mean, I don't remember exactly, but it was, you know, as you can imagine, in A flat, I kind of just stayed right here,
Yeah.
and it was jumping all over the place, and I had to
Yeah.
go in and play it for the head of the jazz department, David Baker, who's a
Oh,
legend.
David Baker, man.
And
Yeah.
I had to play it, and he gave me an A. He's
Well,
goes, that's a wild sound, man, and I don't know. I should do it again. I should learn how to do it, you know.
yeah. David Baker, man. I mean,
Yeah.
heavyweight educator. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you do like standards gigs when you were checking this stuff out?
I tried, but I'm a miserable jazz player, and I just issue a disclaimer right off the bat. I don't play jazz. I love jazz. You know, when I took lessons from a teacher in Louisville when I was in high school, he took me through the first two Berkeley books, and we would learn a standard every week, and it was usually nothing particularly challenging, you know, like Round Midnight or Blue Bossa, you know, stuff like that, you know, and I just didn't pursue it. And, you know, I kind of realized that that's not, there were other things that I wanted to gravitate towards. And I mean, I don't know, you know, I think it was the Albert King expression with fewer notes that I think that grabbed me more. And I just feel like to really play jazz, it's a full-time commitment, and to really be a master at any one style to me is requires an immense commitment. Even, you know, like bluegrass, for instance, I would wager that 99% of the people on the planet, guitar players that are good guitar players, hear bluegrass and think, oh man, it's just like so simple.
Oh,
And when I did the first Dixie Chicks tour, they had just done their bluegrass record, and I got to work with Brian Sutton, and I ended up working with Brian Sutton in the studio a lot after that. And I realized within 5 minutes that, man, I was barely qualified to carry his case, you know. And so he's a guy that grew up, his family were all musicians, and he started playing square dances when he was 9 or 10 years old. And it's the strength and the feel and knowing the tunes. I mean, there are 200 fiddle tunes that if you're a bluegrass player, you got to know. And they're so similar that it's like, you know, it's just like in jazz, you've got to know how to play 200 songs in any key if you want to be I mean, if you're really a jazz player, I think that there's no way you could hang with, you know, pick, you know, there's no way you could play jazz in New York, I don't think, if you didn't know the language. And I was just not, I mean, I don't think I'm lazy. I work really hard at what I do, but that innately or intuitively, I felt that there was something else that spoke to me a little bit more. There were elements of that. There were elements of bluegrass that I'd certainly you know, without having had the experience of that, getting that knowledge and playing with those people and learning those tunes, I would never play the way I do now.
Yeah.
And when I listen to music, I mean, I would rather, I mean, I listen to stuff that I don't play that much. I don't really want to listen to the stuff that sounds like what I do, you know.
Yeah.
So I love listening, and there were things like, you know, Michael Brecker, Jaco Pastorius, their rhythmic sense, their phrasing, that I feel like I really rubbed off, that, you know, I was listening to the phrasing as much as the harmonic, you know, the notes.
Yeah.
That really, again, you know, is a big part of my thing, but I am not a jazz player.
I'm almost surprised to hear that you don't, you're not tempted to go down that road. I just did an interview with Oz Noy, who obviously is a fantastic full-time jazz player with a deep language, but
yeah,
you were saying he doesn't really play a lot of standards gigs, not a lot, but in lockdown, he got together with a couple of his mates who live in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they played in Central Park, and then one of the guys said, "Why don't we just do a standards album?"
Yeah.
And he had to swat up on some tunes because he writes and plays his own tunes. And I'm sure, he's very self-effacing, so I'm sure he knows loads of tunes, but he doesn't commonly do too much of that.
But he had that foundation. I know Alex, and he can play, all the things you are in all 12 in every key and make it his own thing. And he's phenomenal. And John Harrington, I mean, God.
Yeah.
I took a lesson from John when I was 18 or so, and because I was aware of him. We both went to Indiana at the same time, and I heard him play back then. He was a total monster then.
I bet.
And I took a lesson from him. But there were so many good jazz guys there, that it kind of like, I kind of have PTSD for some of the times I tried to sit in with them and just like got lost in the changes and stuff. It's like, I don't ever want to do that again.
Oh, man, you got such great flow, it just seems like a waste. You got that deep kind of way of finding your way through lines. It seems like a waste to me, but there's only so many hours in the day and you're a busy guy, so I get it.
I just want to find my own way of doing it. And in some, I say this with as much humility as I can, that in some way, in my sort of journey to find my own sound and language, it just involves all these different styles together. And with the one thing that I really try to, there's a really fine line when I play live with my band, that even when we sort of start getting out there and it gets jazzier, I don't want it to be fusion. I mean, I want to keep it blues based and organic and, visceral. And I just don't want it to go too far into Weather Report or, because that's not who I am. I'm trying to keep it. I'm trying to keep a low down, rootsy thing to it, even when we're going out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I get it. Because it kind of, you do the country thing, you go your blues rock thing, you go your own sort of intervalley thing, but it's all a thing, isn't it? It's not, trying a bit of this, trying a bit of that. It's all David Grissom music. I get it. No,
I don't want to if I don't want to have here's my country song, here's my blues song. I mean, I want it to all be, here's what I do. And obviously Boots Likes to Boogie, people see way more country, but I don't really think it is, and I've also, as far as that country thing goes, when it comes to those, to me, that's funk guitar, I'll listen to Earth, Wind and Fire and Wah Wah Watson and all that shit when I was in high school. Chicken picking is the same as.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing to me.
Yeah. Fair enough. I saw somewhere that you played with Edgar Winter and some tribute to Johnny Winter. What was that all about?
It comes out in April.
All right.
And he did a tribute to his brother. It's called Brother Johnny.
Right.
And it was all during the lockdown, so I did everything here, and I played on 3 songs. And there's tons of great. I mean, it's just every song has a great guitar player, and then I played on 3 songs.
Yeah.
And it was, the co-producer of the record, Ross Hogarth. I've worked with him for 30 years, going back to the first Mellencamp record that I played on. And he co-produced the record with Edgar and asked me to be a part of it. And they just, sent me stuff. And
yeah,
like I did through the whole pandemic in this room. And I did all day yesterday, and I'm do all day tomorrow. I put guitars on things for people. And I really enjoy doing it. And, sometimes one day it's Edgar Winter, then it's like somebody from New Zealand I've never heard of, and then it's Damian Marley, and then it's usually people that don't really have record deals, or they're independently releasing things. And usually there's no producer here, and usually in 99% of the time they don't send things back and, hey, could you redo that one or ever. They just kind of trust me, I guess, to hopefully elevate the tunes.
I'm sure.
Play the right stuff.
Yeah.
And,
when you do those sessions, do you send more than one option? Say some guy asks you to do a solo on something. Just this is it.
Occasionally I'll give him a couple passes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not like take it or leave it. But if I get something I think is really good and right on, I just will send that. And I find out some producers don't want choices. They want you to send. They tell me, they trust me enough and say, send me the parts.
Right.
Not like send me a couple of options on the parts. But on solos, I find it to be, what I might do sometimes is like, sometimes I'll do two completely different approaches. And other times I'll play a very similar solo, maybe with more attitude or less attitude or a slightly different tone. And to me, solos are the easy part. I mean, solos take no time at all. It's like when I get these songs from people and there's so much stuff on it already, then it's the rhythm stuff. That's way harder than solos. Or I'll get bass and drums and vocal.
So you really got to come up with something.
8 bars of one out front. It's like, I don't even ask anymore. I just put something in there, and that's challenging too, and it can take a long time. But like yesterday, a friend of mine came over who was producing, a guy that I've worked with since I've been in Austin named Michael Ramos. He's does a lot of production. We played together in a bunch of bands. He's great keyboard player, great producer, great friend. He was producing a record on a songwriter here in town I'd not heard of, and the songs were really cool. And so Michael came over and he just sat here and ran the computer, and I sat over there and played the guitar parts. And when, the producer's here and the producer likes what you do to begin with, I mean, I'm reminded that I'm way too hard on myself when nobody's here. It's got to be perfect. Well, this stuff was like moving around on the click and everything. And he's like, man, when the producer's here directing and say, I like that, or play more like that, and they're enthused about something, and they didn't think of that approach, but they really like it. We burned through 5 songs really in a few hours, and putting 3 parts on, cut 2 rhythm parts at least, and then go back, and a lot of, I don't know that any of them had solos, but I put a left part, a right part, and then I'll usually hear other little things to put in, so that there'd be 3 or 4 tracks.
Yeah.
And and a big part of the advantage, and like he said yesterday, we're never working at my house again. I'm coming back here every time, because all these guitars, like on my rack over here, there's a 4 guitar rack that I used yesterday. I've got an electric 12, a baritone, a Gretsch tuned to open E, this guitar, which I use more than anything, and then I got out another PRS that's tuned down a whole step. It's just the sound of those tunings. And so I've got all of them here, and that's the thing about writing number charts obviously on jazz tunes. It doesn't work very well, but in pop Americana, for a guitar player, it's a dream, because you just have one chart.
Yeah.
And I can pick up any guitar in any tuning, and I don't change the chart.
Yeah, right.
And so that's if I, like, we're talking about Jimmy Page arranging things, John Leventhal arranging guitar parts. Those two guys were big influences on me. That Sean Colvin record, A Few Small Repairs, with Sonny Came Home, the one that won the Grammy. That's a master class in guitar arranging, I think. And I don't do it like, I'm not trying to copy either of those guys, but it's just the concepts behind it. And for me, it's grown into tunings, capos, baritones, a guitar tuned down a whole step, a guitar tuned down a minor third. I mean, because when you play a guitar down a minor third, you're playing a G, like in the key of E, I'm playing a G chord. It's a completely different sound. And so to combine all those things, I try to hear 2 or 3 parts at the same time. When I'm hearing a song for the first time, that's why I love looking at number charts, because I just know the sound of the key. That's what I was talking about with the open strings, and every key has a sound. Even if I'm in E, but the guitar's tuned down a minor third, I'm getting the sound of G. And so that's how I try to think of the whole picture. Yeah. Because it's weird to have, usually the records that I work on, there's almost always a left-right rhythm guitar, 2 different parts. And they can be completely different, but it just balances out the spectrum. And if you don't have that, then it presents some mixing challenges. I mean, other things can go, fill out the edges, but I just love the sound of 2 guitars, the interplay between 2 guitars, panned hard left and right. I never get tired of that.
Yeah. You just jogged my memory, actually. I don't want to say too much of your time. I know you're busy, but I noticed a couple of those live things. You're playing a guitar tuned down a tone, so the bottom string, the whole thing's down a tone.
Yeah.
Is that just a sonic decision, or is it something you like to do to sing over, or
both? Right. It's like I used it this week, and I did an instrumental. I just like the sound of the bigger strings low. There's like this song called Belly of the Beast. It just sounds meaner down a whole step. And then I also, this week I played a song called Running on Fumes. And that's just because the vocal range, it's in C, but I played it out of a D position. The lick, you just can't play this lick in the 5 minor, this 5 minor. And I think the vocally, drive the dark highways of the night. Trusting that the gasoline gauge is free. It's just a little more. I mean, I like it. It just sits nicer a step down.
Yeah, right.
And again, it sounds meaner, and it's pretty heavy song.
So when you tune down a tone, what adjustment do you make on string gauges then? How much do you go up?
I think it's like 12 to 54, maybe.
What do you normally use then? Do you use 11s normally then?
I did for a long time on PRSs, but during the pandemic, I've almost gone to all of them 10 and a half to 40, 10.5 to 48.
Yeah.
It's just, on soloing, and you get up in here, it's just, I was finding myself shying away from some of these really high bends.
Yeah.
And if you're not playing live gigs all the time. So the 10 and a halves really do make a difference. It is, for slide playing, for tuning stability, everything, it's better than 10s for me. But there's also a sonic thing. Sometimes 11s are better, sometimes 10s are better. And it's also the guitar will tell you what it wants. Like I do have a couple of PRSs I have with 11s that I keep, and then I have a couple with 10s.
Yeah.
And it's weird because even like on Fenders, I'll go to 10s because of the longer scale length.
Yeah.
But on certain old Gibsons, I've got a Junior and a SG and a 335. For some reason, even though it's a shorter scale length, it's 24 3/4. I use 10s on those. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, as you say, the guitar, you know what you want to.
The guitar kind of tells you in a way, you know, and like what feels good. And these, you know, these have big frets. I just 10 and a half or 11. I don't, to go to 10s is you get little, it's a little, when I get on a live gig, I'm like, I got to really recalibrate that I don't overbend.
Yeah, right. Right.
You know,
what a sound, honestly, whatever guitar you're using, what a sound. I don't want to take any more of your time. Thanks for giving me a bit of guitar acquisition syndrome as well, because I've got to buy one of your guitars. One of these days, I'm going to get one of those things. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a real treat taking some of these things down. Man, guitar thinker, guitar virtuoso, amazing. One of these days I'm going to catch you live. But thanks so much for taking the time. It was a real honor to speak to you.
My pleasure.
And all the best. Hope to see you down the road.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
again.
man. Bye. Bye.